Hello everyone. So when it comes to maps, with regards to 5CP, you look at a lot of the old maps and they have some really funky design choices. They play in very unique ways, sometimes in pretty stilted, off-kilter ways. But then once process became adopted and became popular, every map afterwards was a process clone. In the sense that process not only happened upon or created this style of play, this, faster paced, where the choke points are less impossible to deal with. Like a single soldier can hold a Gully Wash choke, or a Badlands choke, or a Granary choke easily, without question, against an entire team. Not so the case on like a process choke or even a sunshine choke, where there's a little more fluidity. The choke actually offers a tiny bit of micro high ground, just makes things a little easier, and taking space is a little easier. And then as a result, you have like more fluid pressure opportunities where you can maybe take a bit of space. And remember, TF2 is a game about space. But anyway, the point I'm making is that post-process, 5CP maps were process. Like they took those design inspirations, and process changed the way how 5CP maps are looked at and thought about. And as far as 5CP's little brother KOTH goes, where the only map that was played for such a long time was Viaduct, or the pro version product, was the only map for years and years and years, and just stood as the odd duck out. And people still liked playing KOTH, although playing KOTH and playing product were just the same thing, so maybe they liked playing product. They liked it enough that it stuck around in the map pool. It never got removed. But slowly but surely, a couple maps have since been really played with seriously, as far as KOTH is concerned, that being Clearcut and Bagel. And the point I'm trying to make in this video, and what I want to talk about, is that I kind of think that Bagel is the process of KOTH, where at the moment in time that it is right now, it's very clearly a standout KOTH map, and the preferred KOTH map for, I'd say, a pretty large majority of the community at this point. Now, of course, with maps and just really anything with regards to sixes, you can find conflicting opinions. I'm sure there are plenty of people who hate Bagel, but the vast majority of players think that Bagel is the standout KOTH, and I do think that Bagel kind of will redefine what KOTH means. And that's what I want to cover, is what does Bagel actually do differently, right? So for starters, just a basic introduction to the KOTH format and some of the, I suppose, sliders you can adjust. KOTH, of course, is centered around a single point, and rather than being strictly a space, a game mode about space like 5CP is, there's still that element. You still need space to control the point. It is more so about time and ticking down time on your own clock. Because, in a game mode like 5CP, if you wipe the other team twice, then you can just win a round off that, even from your own last, right? But that's not really the case in KOTH, and if you wipe a team twice, then you're really, depending on how quickly they happened, only, a minute and a half of time tick down, which is a lot still, as you would expect from wiping a team twice. But still, does not outright win the round. You need that clock to tick down. And there are some quirks, considering the fact that both teams could be losing tons of players back and forth. Super crazy, everyone's dying all the time type of game state. And as long as one team has the point that entire time, the actual game state is functionally no different from if no one died and the teams just kind of stared at each other and one team tried to pressure, didn't do anything. So it does center all around that point, right? But what are the main mechanics surrounding that? Well, the team that has control of the point obviously doesn't really have to do anything because they, have the point. They don't need to work to cap it. All they need to do is thwart the other team's efforts. And, there's multiple ways to do this. You can make the case, and I do think on a map like Bagel, it makes a lot of sense that the best defense is a good offense, where it's difficult to respond to everything adequately, and having your own offensive measures to disrupt any plans that the other team's trying to make to cap does work out quite effectively. But ignoring that, you're mainly looking to win a fight to convert the point. And, cap time is obviously a wonderful thing to have because, cap time means that the fight that you win doesn't have to be so decisive. If you have a ton of cap time, then you can just get really good spam for a moment, and then when the other team is forced back, you are able to flip the point. So, as far as winning a fight goes, there's multiple ways to do that, like spam across point in conjunction with cap time. You can be bombing your soldiers, you can be getting players behind. And most of the uniqueness of KOTH maps center around how teams try to cap that point, right? Because different gameplay opportunities are opened up on the different maps. But as far as the sliders I was mentioning, some of the factors that are at play as far as how easy this point is to convert is literally how quickly it caps, because that's not just a standard speed, and I think it differs on every KOTH map. But also, just like the geometry, how big or small is the point, how good is the vision. Because remember, like, spam is the primary means for a team to prevent players from capping. And how quickly the point caps is one of the primary draws of KOTH. There's things to be said about, like, forward holds or just forward hold, like, positioning, how strong that is, being another map quirk. And that's certainly a consideration. But I think the main gameplay that people are interested in is how the point works, right? So yeah. Now I want to talk about product, which is, in many respects, just the kind of standard KOTH map. And when I say standard, I don't mean in the processification type of way. I mean it in this is the default on which these other maps were building off of, because this was the only KOTH for so long that anyone making a KOTH map is going to know about product and think about product. I just fed for that ammo pack. So in many respects, product is a very default-y map. The point caps pretty slowly, all things considered, but not egregiously so. Very spammable from pretty much everywhere. And you definitely need a lot of soldier activity in order to buy yourself space to cap with. And this could happen across the point. This could happen on the quote-unquote flank, which is just a tiny little door on like one side. So the flank is more so just a side rather than a unique area, region. It's not super separated. But anyway, yeah, very kind of defaulty stuff. It's what the KOTH strategy developed around to begin with. So with that in mind, let's talk about Clearcut next and what Clearcut does differently. Because obviously I said a whole bunch of nothing about product because, again, it is the standard in which the others were built around. So what does Clearcut do differently? Well, Clearcut is a much larger map, which lends itself more towards a kind of mid-fight size to it. So a lot of the mechanics you would use on a mid-fight do carry over to Clearcut. As far as flanking opportunities go, Clearcut is much, much stronger because there is a wide open skybox that is extremely easy to high bomb over. And as a result, it's extremely easy to get soldiers behind. So yeah, getting soldiers behind is a powerful strategy, and the defending team will absolutely play to contest those players or leave them or do whatever. Again, a lot of the strategy revolves around getting players behind because it is so easy to get soldiers behind. But with this fantastic flanking opportunity, it's not necessarily that easy to contest the point because the point caps very slowly, I think slower than product. And it is so wide open with very easy to maintain premier high ground nearby that capping the point is extremely difficult. The spam is ridiculous, and as a result, for many, Clearcut is their least favorite KOTH because the point is just so difficult to flip. It's not uncommon to see a Clearcut point stay capped for multiple minutes before flipping, and you have these very long drawn-out holds that are difficult to break. So that was that's kind of how Clearcut stands out as the very easy map to flank on as a soldier, but still nonetheless very difficult to cap the point. And people didn't really like it that much. I mean, it still got played, and actually got played in like Invite Grand Finals, and was the deciding map to end Froyo's, you know, however many year long winning streak, which was amazing to watch live. But yeah, that's Clearcut. And what does Bagel do differently? Well, oh, another thing I should mention about Clearcut is, again, very product-esque. The flank is just kind of a side of the map, and not really separated. So anyway, what does Bagel do differently? Well, and now you actually get to see what's happening, nicely enough, as this is the map we're on. So what does Bagel do differently? Well, on Bagel, the point caps insanely quickly, and this was considered kind of the quirk of Bagel for a while, is just the fact that it caps so quickly. Meaning, rather than having to resoundingly win a fight, and in some cases like win 2 kind of smaller fights in a row in order to cap that point, no, you can cap the point fully off of something so simple as getting like good spam in and forcing the other team to back up. Like if you hit their demo for 120, in many cases that's enough to cap the point. So it does assign a certain gravitas to the fights that you're taking, and also makes it so that a team that's very fluid and a team that is maybe good at being able to capitalize off very small advantages like that do benefit. So there's that. And then the other thing is that the flank is completely separated into its own house, meaning these are very isolated flank fights, which still have play with what happens on the point. Like a demo can spam into a house, a scout from the point can jump through the window and help take a fight. So there's a lot of the same fluidity as far as taking these fights goes, but they're still much more isolated being in these houses. And so as a result, these houses are fantastic places from which to project spam and project control onto the point. So house control becomes a big thing, kind of a secondary advantage or a secondary thing to play around than just the objective itself. So this immediately introduced like far more depth into a KOTH map, which is already a relatively simple format compared to 5CP. But it just makes it a lot of fun to play. Now, of course, you can find your people who hate playing left house on soldier because you're kind of just the the guardian of the left house, making sure your team controls it. You still get a lot of spam, and you're still taking fights and doing whatnot. I think every class has its place in Bagel, which again is a good thing. But I think the big thing is just those two. Is the fact that the point is easy to cap. Another thing making the point easy to cap as well is the fact that the middle of the point is completely obstructed, or obstructing, meaning your vision is this is horrible phrasing. The fact that the point, blocks vision means that, spamming the point is not so easy necessarily. A scout standing on the point is not going to immediately take a 90 damage sticky. The demo has to be a bit better about that, rather than just being able to sit back and see that guy from range. The demo might have to commit a little bit to get the proper angle on like a scout or something like that. So the actual dynamics of the point are very interesting because of that obscurity introduced. But yeah, though the vision on point not being crystal clear, on top of the fact that the point caps insanely quickly, means that you have a very dynamic game flow surrounding that that point. And remember, with KOTH, the only thing that really matters is that objective. So a team's entire plan is long-term to control the point as soon as possible. So making this more interesting makes the map more interesting. And then I think isolating the flank into these houses also benefits the map a lot. And, you introduce interesting gameplay for these flank members that otherwise would just kind of be on a side. Now they have this unique region of the map to play around with. More specifically the roamer, because the flank scout will rotate over from place to place. So yeah, that's something else to consider. And another thing I should mention is that the what makes Bagel considered kind of the best map is definitely, in many respects, just that the other maps have very obvious flaws, and Bagel doesn't have those obvious flaws. You can make the case that... Oh, another thing I should mention as well about Bagel is it has the fastest spawns on any map by far. So you see a lot of aggressive plans, like losing a player while being the team with control of point is not as severe because they spawn very quickly. So you have a lot more 4-man opportunities, a lot more sacking opportunities, stuff like that, which tends to lead to a higher pace, more aggressive playstyle. So there's that. But with that in mind, what was the train of thought that I interrupted to make that tangent? I was talking about, yeah, obvious flaws on other maps. So for many, the fast spawns and... gonna have to load up another demo here. For many, the fast spawns and the fast flipping of the point, more so the spawns actually, is a flaw of Bagel. Let's see if we can't load up a KOTH here. Do I see a KOTH Bagel here? Let's go to a different map, just so people can actually see. Is there a clear cut? There's a clear cut. So these fast spawns means that teams can refight a lot, and a lot of the time in like a double overtime situation, the team that has control of the point is kind of slated to lose because the other team gets better spawners, of course. You have longer spawns if you have control of a KOTH point. So you can have like super crazy overtime where you have like multiple spawn waves sending it at each other over the point. It's somewhat of a rarity, but certainly happens far more on Bagel than any other KOTH map. But some people enjoy that really high stakes, down to the wire gameplay, which could be nice. But yeah, that is for some considered kind of the flaw of Bagel. But for the other maps, it's a little more apparent. So on Clearcut, the big flaw is just the point is so difficult to cap. You have to commit so many resources to it and have a scout on the point for so long in order to properly flip it. And I mean, you can just see based on what's happening now, like the point hasn't capped yet. Like both teams have an Uber. I just get dropped in mine. That's very sad. Yeah, these fights go on so long, and we'll see. Okay, my team does leave. So it took an exchange dropping the demo for this point to even flip the first time, right? And that tends to lead towards like really long swingy rounds where a team can just win a round off of one cap in some cases. Not to mention that, you know, there's potential for defensive off classes, actually. Like a heavy in Shed is really powerful if you play it correctly. I've played on a team that ran Engineer on Clearcut, and these are classes that are generally unfun to play against and slow the game down a ton. On top of the fact that in order to properly manage them, you generally need to commit a lot of resources, which is fine and balanced in like a aggressive setting where you're trying to, you know, cap a not cap, when you're trying to like push with Uber ad or something to last, for instance, or push off of picks or some advantage that you're pushing off of. But in KOTH, where you're trying to create an advantage, doing so against a heavy is much more difficult. So I think overall Clearcut does, and don't get me wrong, I don't even mind this map. It's still fun to play, but I think it does kind of demonstrate that making the point easily contestable in dynamic ways is overall a positive thing in KOTH. Because as we see, a map that otherwise is quite solid, falters a lot when it comes to being able to properly contest the point. And you need to do a lot right in order to get it. And then the other one is Product, which I've talked about being my least favorite map, or at least mentioned that, in the entire pool, not just KOTH. And there's really one big issue with it. So, I mean, contesting the point is like fine. It's not great, don't get me wrong. And in many ways it is actually comparable to Clearcut, but overall, probably a little better. But contesting the point's okay, not great. The flank, again, okay, not great. But the big thing is the fact that Product is just a sniper map. And you will regularly see full-time snipers played on Product. And the pace of the game gets completely and utterly ruined when there's a sniper on Product. Because, remember, KOTH is about the point and capping it as soon as possible. And, you know, on a map like Bagel, for instance, I already mentioned that there is the kind of accessory objective of controlling houses and maybe shoving a house in order to flip the point, stuff like that. So again, with the long-term goal of capping the point, obviously, but there's still these short-term objectives in order to achieve that. And on Product, if the other team has a sniper and they have the point, then suddenly your objective flips. Like that secondary objective you have to do first is deal with the sniper. And there are no reasonable, I suppose. It is reasonable. But there are no good ways to deal with that sniper. I mean, the only way really is having a soldier bomb them, right? And soldier aggression. Because obviously you don't want to peek your demo, you don't want to peek your medic. There are so many different sight lines and angles. It's just a complete playground for the class. And keep in mind as well, considering the fact that the flank is just one tiny door. So if it's being held, then, you know, you're not going to be able to bomb through that. But that being said, like barring that, the map, like the flank itself, is still kind of just on a side of the map. So any soldier that's bombing to try and kill the sniper can just get body shot by the sniper, and their bomb is ruined, and their 50 HP falling, they're just plummeting to the ground and getting cleaned up. So even players trying to counter the sniper can still just kind of hit their shot, which is not that difficult. They're still crossing sight lines and things. And then as a result, you just can't do that anymore, and they're just earning more and more time. So the pace of the game on Product gets completely ruined by sniper, and you see a lot of just sniper v sniper games, and it really just becomes a game of spot and deal with the sniper. Now, of course, a team with a sniper is going to be less effective at capping the point. So in really, really serious environments, you tend to see the sniper switch off when they actually need to cap. But that's not all. I mean, that's in theory, because again, if the sniper just hits shots, then that doesn't really exist anymore. So that's the big flaw of Product. And also you'll notice that with Clearcut and Bagel, sniper is extremely limited use or just bad on both of them. And that's for very good reason, because, you know, people saw Product and they're like, I don't want my map to be the sniper map, or they don't want to play the map that is just the sniper map, and as a result, you take much extra care towards these sightlines and things like that. But yeah, is there anything else to talk about here? I think it is mostly just talking about Bagel and what makes this the standout map. I do think that future KOTH maps that we see are gonna be Bagel inspired, because Bagel kind of showed what makes KOTH good, being able to like isolate these fights on the flank, which also lends itself towards like a lot of opportunistic play potential from not only the roamer and the flank at large, but also like the pocket soldier, who is kind of the left house watcher. If that left house isn't being watched, that is a free flank behind the other team and a free bomb. So there's a lot of opportunistic play, which tends to favor like skilled players that, you know, are good at timing things. So there's that. And then, of course, the point being so dynamic as far as vision and as far as capping speed goes, lends itself towards a really interesting dynamic when it comes to playing the point. So that, I think those two things are largely what makes Bagel stand out. And I think those are two conventions that we're going to start seeing a lot more in future installments of KOTH maps. But yeah, I think that's all I have to talk about. So yeah, I'll probably call it there. Hope you guys enjoyed, and I will see you next time.